The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
I always start every episode with a sound bite to set the stage for the first story, but due to the nature of this particular sound bite, I want to give you a warning. It involves the Sacramento police shooting of 22-year-old Stephon Clark. The audio is disturbing and it includes gunshots, so viewer, or in this case listener, discretion is advised.
Hey! Show me your hands! Stop! Stop! Flash them south. Shots fired, some stay down. Show me your hands! See your hands!
There is a link in the description that would take you to the Sacramento Bee. They are the media outlet, the newspaper that received the video from the police. And there's two videos, two body cam videos, as well as an overhead infrared video from helicopters that were overhead. The infrared video actually tells, if not the whole story, it tells you a lot more about this shooting where the 22-year-old Stephon Clark was killed in his grandmother's backyard. And they said gun in the video, in the audio that you heard. They said gun twice. And as it turns out, per usual, he didn't have a gun. Later on, they said it was a type of crowbar or something. Turned out it wasn't a crowbar. What he had in his hand was his cell phone. Now, again, the overhead video from the infrared video from the helicopter gives you a more complete story, but it only gives you a story of how these 6 seconds went down and the immediate seconds beforehand, but it doesn't tell you anything else. And these are the parts that police officers generally get to fill in, you know. But if you watch and I do recommend that you watch the infrared video, if nothing else, it is disturbing. But it does show Stephon Clark jumping the fence and going up to the back door of what turns out to be his backyard. Now, the assumption or the allegation, rather, from the police department is that he was running from the police. But the overhead the helicopter shot didn't capture that. The police officers, they were pursuing someone. But this was a guy who jumped the fence to get to his backyard, a 22-year-old. And unfortunately, this is going to be the fact that is going to be intentionally construed or misconstrued as some sign of guilt, that Stephon was guilty of something. And even if he was guilty, I believe there's a quote in the Sacramento Bee piece, even if he was guilty of something, at the time the police officers interacted with him, they did not give him any opportunity to actually comply. Now, if you listen to the video, there is a hands up or show me your hands that said initially, but there's no one in sight. And this is actually confirmable by looking at the overhead helicopter view. At the same time that the police officer is initially yelling, show me your hands, there's no one there whatsoever. He's shouting at the darkness. It's not until the second show me your hands that he's actually within a line of sight of even seeing Stephon Clark. In other words, to give you a better picture, once Stephon jumps the fence into his backyard, he runs and he is in his backyard on the back patio. At that point, police come up the side of the house to the backyard and they peek over the edge and they say, show me your hands. As they are approaching the edge, one of the officers yells, show me your hand, almost preemptively. I'm not suggesting anything other than he saw something in the dark, but it wasn't Stephon Clark. Because if you look at the overhead video, he can't see Stephon Clark until the second time someone yells, show me your hands. But either way you cut it, either way you take it, I want you to understand what they're responding to here. The police department, this is according to the New York Daily News. The link is in the description. The police officers said that officers were responding to a report that someone was breaking car windows nearby. The suspect was described as a 6'1", wearing a black hooded sweatshirt and dark pants, hiding in a backyard. So to a person, to a person breaking car windows, the police responded with the overhead helicopter and boots on the ground, guns drawn, to a car window being busted, even a series of car windows being busted. They weren't responding to an armed robbery. They weren't responding to even a drug deal, because that's the worst thing in the world. They weren't responding to a murder. They were responding to someone allegedly busting out car windows. So let's assume Stephon Clark, who appears to be running from the police in the overhead video, even though he's running to his backyard. I can see from their perspective, oh, he's running from police. They didn't know that was his backyard, but they didn't take the time to figure that out or to ascertain anything about the situation whatsoever. But peradventure, Stephon Clark actually was out there doing something stupid, busting out car windows on a Sunday night because he had nothing better to do. Let's pretend that that's actually what happened and the police got the right guy. Is there anything about this situation that warranted this type of violence? Anything whatsoever? Absolutely not. In no way. Had this been in suburbia, they would have responded by knocking on doors. Hey, have you seen? Have you heard anything? But look how they respond in the black community. They respond with the damn helicopter overhead, and they respond with weapons drawn and a foot chase over broken windows. Again, according to the New York Daily News, deputies told police the suspect had to use a toolbar to break another home's window. Deputies in Sacramento County Sheriff Department helicopter spotted Clark in a backyard and told deputies that he had shattered a window with a toolbar. Deputies instructed officers on the ground to the man's location. So even as they approach, the suspicion is not that he has a gun, but that he has a toolbar. You cannot take this. Oh, you know what? 100%. Let's give the police the benefit of the doubt. Bear with me. Don't cut off yet. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt that maybe they had their guy. Stephon Clark was going around busting out car windows. Let's give them that, right? Because when you look at the helicopter video, it definitely looks like he's running from something and to his home. But even if you give them that, why on earth do they respond in such a draconian fashion? I know the answer already. You know the answer already. But let's pose the question for those who may not be on this train of thought. Why on earth would the police respond to something that amounts to, I don't know, in some cases, a misdemeanor? Destruction of private property. Maybe it's a low-level felony. But why would they respond to it with this level of violence, even if they knew that this was their guy? They had been warned that he had a crowbar, a toolbar, and turns out he had nothing but his cell phone. So there's still a possibility that this wasn't even their guy, but they did not take a moment to ascertain, to figure it out, because they went in and made a simple situation of vandalism. This is all according to every report that I've read so far. At most, this kid is guilty of vandalism, and they turned it into a murder. And there it is. Alleged vandalism carries a death sentence. Because the police officers come in, guns drawn, with the assumption immediately they had been told that there's a toolbar, but their immediate assumption was gun. Show me your hands, gun. That's the exact phrase. Show me your hands, gun. That's the amount of space they put between the time they said, show me your hands. It literally was, show me your hands, gun. Didn't identify themselves as police officers. And of course, the Sacramento mayor, according to the Sacramento Bee, says that we can't second guess our officers. The hell you can. Yes, you can. You better. Anyway, I can't even really cover this story too much because there's so many levels of frustration that are involved. And here comes the next level of frustration. This is what you can expect over the next couple of days. Why did he run? From some conservative. You know, so probably some liberals going to say the same thing. Why was he running? If he wasn't guilty, why was he running? If he was guilty, he should not have been out there doing what he did. He shouldn't have been breaking the law because vandalism deserves the death sentence, summary execution in the black community. Now, everything is fine. Everything the police officers expect this over the next couple of days. Everything the police officers did here was appropriate because this guy committed acts of vandalism. Allegedly. And we're not even sure if that's the case because the video on the helicopter starts too late. All you see is a guy jumping the fence. This kid literally could be going through a neighbor's yard who knows him. These neighbors know him and he's jumping the fence to go to his home. But all that matters is he looked guilty. Well, what was he guilty of? Vandalism. And I'm sorry, that's a reason to execute him on sight. Well, we thought he had a gun. Why did you think he had a gun when the helicopter told you he had a toolbar? Because it was dark and he had something in his hand. Did it ever occur to you that most people carry cell phones? The majority of humanity on this planet carry cell phones in their hand any time of day or night. Well, he shouldn't have been running. Yeah, that's basically what it is. Black man, don't run. Because if you run, no matter what you are innocent of or guilty of, even if it's vandalism, if you run, that's their excuse to explain away your execution.
What I can tell you, having listened to that recording, he does not at all mention anything about terrorism, nor does he mention anything about hate. But instead, it is the outcry of a very challenged young man talking about challenges in his personal life that led him to this point. Based on what we heard on the recording, he described the 6 devices, and we have recovered those 6 devices.
Headline from USA Today, quote, very challenged young man, Austin serial bomber, left confession on cell phone. The voice that you heard was that of Chief Brian Manley of the Austin Police Department. And hey, you know, this serial bomber who terrorized Austin, Texas for over 3 weeks, targeting and killing 2 black men. Hey, he was just a very challenged young man. And according to Police Chief Manley, he wasn't a terrorist and it wasn't hate driven because that's what the young man said on the voicemail message he left over. When, pray tell, did we allow terrorists to start self-identifying? When, I mean, of course, bin Laden didn't think he was a terrorist. He considered himself a hero. But in this case, this young man gets to say, I wasn't I'm not a terrorist. I didn't say anything about terrorism. I didn't say anything about hate or bigotry. I'm just having a really hard time in my life. Yeah, bub, everybody's having a hard time. Everybody doesn't go out and kill people of the other race because of that hard time. But there's going to be a fascinating juxtaposition that's going to happen today and over the next few days. Here, this terrorist in Texas who targeted and killed black men. This terrorist was a homeschooled Christian. But hey, you know, he was a complex figure, very challenged young man, had difficulties in life, and didn't think he was doing anything bigoted. This terrorist was a conservative, according to his family. They said that he was not reactionary, but he researched every issue very deeply before he spoke on it. I wonder where he did his research. I wonder where this terrorist was radicalized. Most likely on YouTube. Guaranteed that he's consuming some of the media some of the media heads that I discuss. Probably was a fan of people like, I don't know, Ben Shapiro. See, nobody is going to ever be held accountable for what they say. Here are a couple of things that I observe. Never mind the fact that they are going to humanize this guy. And let me get back to the juxtaposition before I go off too far. The juxtaposition that you're going to see over the next couple of days is you're going to see the vilification of 22-year-old Stephon Clark in Sacramento, who was killed by police. You're going to see the vilification of him and the humanization of this very challenged young man in Austin, Texas, who was a terrorist. That's what you're going to see over the next couple of weeks. And it's going to go down party lines because Republicans, conservatives have a vested interest in never allowing there to be a single narrative that undermines their ironclad view of police supremacy and heroism. Police are heroes to them up until they don't need them anymore. But I digress. So conservatives are going to do everything they possibly can. They're going to research this story. They're going to find out everything about Stephon Clark and just show that he was this brooding, dark, nefarious figure who was lurking in the shadows, and the heroic police officers had to do whatever they had to do in order to make sure that they got home to their wife and kids. You want the police officers to get home, don't you? Simultaneously, the media is going to do their job of humanizing the terrorist with the aid of the police chief. I mean, that's literally what's happening. That's going to happen right before your eyes, because that's exactly the formula that we as Americans have been exposed to. That's what they use all the time. That's just what they do. Black people are vilified. People of color are vilified, particularly if police are involved. You don't even have to be police. You could be a vigilante neighborhood watch loser, George Zimmerman, and they're going to make the black guy out to be horrible. There's a brilliant juxtaposition of two headlines someone shared on Twitter, and the link is in your description. But on the left, it shows how they are already humanizing this young man, this terrorist. See, I slipped up and called him a young man. He's a terrorist out of Austin, Texas. New York Times, that's how they covered it. Go back to Trayvon Martin, and they said he had weed in his system. Because, as we all know, smoke a little weed and you've got to go. This is so frustrating on so many levels. And I just, and I tweeted it out this morning, but I'm just curious if the media are aware of how complicit they are with this. In fact, they are the purveyors of this. They peddle this as a profession. They have made standard operating procedures out of finding bad information and publishing negative information on black and brown victims of any type of violence, whether it's police violence or vigilante violence. And then they go through painstaking contortions to write complex narratives about the life. See, we black people, we're reduced to just the caricature of a Disney villain. We are just the brooding, balking, terrifying character that had to be put down. And just in case you had any inclination of something different, the media slides in there to dig up anything in the past. Oh, in second grade, he stole a car. He stole a toy truck. In eighth grade, he skipped class. That's the hyperbole. Here's the truth. Freddie Gray, his mother used to be on drugs. That's not hyperbole. That's literally an article that was written about Freddie Gray, who was killed by Baltimore police. While the Baltimore police were on trial, they put his mother on trial in the court of public opinion. This is standard operating procedures, and the police officers, nope, strike that. journalist, you need to know that when you do these types of things, you become the tip of the spear of white supremacy. You are a tool of white supremacy. Not only a tool, you are the perpetuator of white supremacy. And that's what we're going to see over the next few days, because it's going to take a while for us to undo the standard operating procedures of making complex creatures out of white terrorists and making overly simplified villains out of black people. And here we have two stories at the same time. Stephon Clark, who will be vilified, and whatever the hell the terrorist's name was, who's already being humanized.
Recent piece in National Geographic tells you a lot about demographics in America and about how bewilderingly fast they're changing without any real public debate on the subject. The magazine profiles the small coal mining town of Hazleton, Pennsylvania. In the year 2000, Hazleton's population was 2% Hispanic. Just 16 years later, Hazleton is majority Hispanic. That's a lot of change. People who grew up in Hazleton return to find out they can't communicate with the people who now live there. And that's bewildering for people. That's happening all over the country. No nation, no society has ever changed this much, this fast.
Boy, you can count on Tucker Carlson sanitizing and formalizing white grievance. I talked about the other day or yesterday, I talked about Donald Trump being the master of white supremacy. But the pattern and the mold that Donald Trump mastered was set first by Fox News and modern day conservatives in the Republican Party. Bill O'Reilly sanitized it, dressed it up, put it in a suit, made it seem official. So official that he sat down with presidents and sat down with senators and had conversations with them about white grievance and the browning of America. And now his protege, or his replacement, Tucker Carlson, is doing the same thing, peddling to this fear of America becoming something that we fundamentally don't recognize because it's being browned. It's darkening. We don't speak the same language. And it's amazing how in this short clip, I have another clip to play, but it's amazing how seamlessly and confidently, without any fear of repercussions, he introduces a nice, sanitized, dressed up with a suit and tie form of bigotry into the national dialogue at a very volatile time in America. He mentions the volatility, but does he not even recognize? He does. The fact that he's contributing to that volatility. He's planting the seeds of fear and the seeds of the fear of change. He's planting that in the minds of already closed-minded people. Type of people, the only type of seed that could take root in their brain is a seed of hatred. And here is Tucker Carlson there to oblige them. Because God forbid that a town change over time at a quote unquote bewildering rate. And he says that this doesn't happen. This hasn't happened before. Tucker, of course this happens. How do you think America changed from the Native Americans? All of a sudden, a whole bunch of white colonizers just appeared out of nowhere and at a bewildering rate changed the face of America. But this time they didn't change it by simply moving into the neighborhood, getting jobs and improving the economy of the neighborhood. No, your ancestors changed this country by murdering everyone. Let's listen to the next clip.
Now, before you start calling anyone bigoted, consider and be honest. How would you feel if that happened in your neighborhood?
It happened before, Tucker, and it was called colonization. And it's happening now, Tucker, in our neighborhoods, our historically black neighborhoods, and it's called gentrification. What else do you have to say, you brilliant person, you?
It doesn't matter how nice the immigrants are. They probably are nice. Most immigrants are nice. That's not the point. The point is, this is more change than human beings are designed to digest.
So I'm not sure if this is something Tucker Carlson learned from Donald Trump or if this is something Donald Trump learned from Tucker Carlson, but the methodology is the same. You present bigotry in its purest form, but you give people who don't want to believe that they're actually bigoted, you give them an out by saying, it's not really about you being nice. I think you're a nice guy. I think you immigrants are really good people. I just have a problem with how fast things are changing. Let's slow things down a bit. In other words, don't move into my neighborhood. Now, is it less or more bigoted simply because you like the individual person and you think that they're nice, but simultaneously you're saying, don't move into my neighborhood? I'm telling you, Tucker Carlson can catch these hands, figuratively, rhetorically speaking, of course.
This pace of change makes societies volatile, really volatile, just as ours has become volatile. And notice where this change is not happening. Any place our leaders live. They caused all of this with their reckless immigration policies, and yet their own neighborhoods are basically unchanged. They look like it's 1960. No demographic change at all in their zip codes. Our leaders are for diversity, just not where they live.
Tucker Carlson is an all-out white nationalist, and he's just dressed up on television doing it. He's able to deliver it without the appearance of fomented vitriol. He's able to do it without the stigma and the stench of hatred because he does it with a boyish charm and a insincere look of concern on his face. He really just wants us to slow down and talk about this. Let's just slow down and think about this. We haven't had a national conversation on this. What the hell was the Civil Rights Movement? What the hell was this entire last 200 years about? What are you talking about, Tucker Carlson? Good question. I'm glad you asked. He is speaking the language of white nationalists, and he's doing it on a national platform. He's doing it in the same vein. It's just a continuation of what Bill O'Reilly did, but Bill O'Reilly did not use certain keywords as often and as frequently as Tucker Carlson does. But Tucker knows exactly who he's talking to. He's talking to that angry grandpa just as much as he's talking to that angry 22-year-old who's likely to become a terrorist one day because he doesn't believe that America should be diverse. Diversity is the worst thing in the world to these people. They feel like America should be based on your ethnicity and not you conforming to a set of ideas. They believe in ethnic nationalism versus civic nationalism. And this is an entire movement of a bunch of lily white bigoted people who don't think they're bigots, right? Because they think you're nice. They just want you to not move into their neighborhood. They think you're nice, but just don't move into our country. I'm not a racist, but I just don't want my community to change. Meanwhile, their ancestors spread across this globe like a cancer, like a plague, infecting every single nation on this planet with their white supremacy and their colonization, displacing millions or enslaving millions, forever changing the face and the culture and the nature of civilizations all across this planet. And now all of a sudden they say, wait a minute, this is getting out of control. There's too much movement of peoples. There's too many people now coming to our society. There's too many people of different ethnicities and different cultures and backgrounds coming to our country. Forget about immigration. Forget about people who are seeking asylum, people who are refugees fleeing war-torn countries, even though we are the cause of the wars in those countries. Stay in those war-torn countries because now that we can't oppress you, we don't want you. They had no problem with the number of black and brown people in this country when they had the ability to oppress us. But now that we're moving towards an era where we are actually striving towards all of us being treated equal, now they're like, slow down. Hold your horses. We really need to talk about this diversity thing. I've got nothing else to say about this, but Tucker Carlson, you're going to see me. Rhetorically speaking, I'm going to have to do some real videos on this guy because he is peddling white nationalism on a dog whistle level that I think is second only to Donald Trump. If Donald Trump is the master of white supremacy, then Tucker Carlson is the Padawan or the knight of white supremacy. That's all the time we have today. I didn't realize the time was getting away from me like that. But before I go, I want to thank everyone who's participating in our fundraising campaign, helping us to get the new rental facility for videos. And so 3 new patrons since yesterday. Human People Person. Love the name. New patron. Thank you for becoming a patron at $10 a month. You're definitely helping us out. Also want to thank Tevon S. Thank you for your pledge, or editing your pledge. They have been a patron for some time, and they increased their pledge to $10. Thank you so much. And Aaron H., thank you for doing the same, increasing your pledge to $10. Thank you to everyone who's making this possible. Go to patreon.com/the BPD show. Today's bonus show, we're going to be discussing Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg. And you already know I don't like him, but we're going to talk about him potentially speaking before Congress, as well as their responsibilities to privacy and society. That's going to be on today's bonus show. To get access to it, become a patron. Go to patreon.com/the BPD show. Support the show and help us hit our goal. See you tomorrow.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.